On the day I got laid off, I called my boyfriend Liam. He never picked up. Soaked from the rain, I pushed open the front door of our apartment, shivering as I clutched the cardboard box of my belongings. Inside, the place was packed. Loud music blasted, and to my shock, my parents, my relatives, and all of our friends were there. In the center of the crowd stood Liam and my best friend, Chloe, dressed in a tuxedo and a white bridal gown, throwing a massive wedding party. The box slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor. Liam walked over to me, his expression chillingly calm. "What are you doing here?" I stared at him, my voice shaking. "What is this?" His eyes flickered with a brief flash of guilt, but he just sighed. "Chloe and I got legally married last year. Today is just the reception." Without thinking, I slapped him hard across the face. "Get out. All of you, get the hell out. This is my apartment," I screamed. The next moment, our mutual friends shoved me back. "How could you hit him like that? Seriously, we only kept it from you because we didn't want you to be devastated. Liam would have broken up with you ages ago anyway." Amidst the chaos, my parents stepped forward, looking at me with deep disappointment. "Elena, this apartment isn't yours," my dad said. "Your mother and I bought it, and we've already gifted it to Chloe as a wedding present. Today is their big day," my mom added. "Don't make a scene. Just go to your room." I stood by the doorway, laughing through my tears. It was so absurd. 5 years of dating. 3 years of living together. My boyfriend had become my best friend's husband. My own parents secretly bought them our home as a wedding gift. And all of my friends had been happily keeping the secret. Right now, I was nothing but a joke. When they shoved me into the bedroom, my knee slammed hard against the bed frame. Before I could even stand up, the door slammed shut in my face. I froze. The noise outside dimmed for a second. Then the party started up again, even louder than before. I was locked in that room from noon until total darkness fell. No one came to open the door. No one even checked on me. I screamed until my throat was completely raw. In the end, I could only slide down against the door, listening to the party noises slowly fade away. But my mind only grew sharper and clearer. When the house finally went completely quiet, the door opened. I pulled myself up using the bedpost. My legs were completely numb. My parents walked in first, followed by Liam and Chloe. My mom's eyes were red, looking as if she were the one suffering. "Elena, honey, look. You and Liam did those fertility tests before, right? We saw the portal report. The doctor said, it might be very hard for you to ever have children." My entire body went rigid. We had done those tests right before Liam and I were planning to get married. But I never got my hands on the results. Liam said he would handle the portal access, and I hadn't thought much of it. It turned out I didn't need to think. Everyone had already made the decisions for me. I looked at Liam. "You knew all along?" He kept his head down, refusing to meet my eyes. My dad spoke up. "Liam is an only child. This kind of issue would have ruined your marriage eventually. If you two broke up normally, could you even handle the heartbreak?" My mom immediately chimed in. "So your dad and I talked it over. We figured it was best to let Chloe and Liam get married first and have a baby. Once that's done, you can come back. We can all live together and get through this." My brain exploded. My lips trembled, and it took me forever to force out a single sentence. "Have you all lost your minds?" Chloe took a step forward. Her eyes were watery, her voice soft and fragile. "Elena, everyone is just really worried about you. I've been alone for so many years, and I've always seen you guys as my family. If I can help you keep Liam, I'm willing to do it." She finished speaking and gently placed her hand on her flat stomach. "Besides, I'm already pregnant." I stared at her stomach, a wave of intense nausea hitting my throat. I slowly turned to Liam. "And you agreed to this?" He stayed dead silent. My vision went dark. My chest felt so tight I couldn't breathe. The next second, I collapsed onto the floor. When I woke up, the room was pitch black. I fumbled around for my phone. The moment the screen lit up, notifications flooded in. Missed calls, messages from former coworkers, and over 100 unread alerts in our group chat on Snapchat. I tapped into it. At first, some people were asking why Liam had suddenly married Chloe. But then the tone shifted. Someone wrote, "Oh my god, my favorite ship actually became canon. Right? Chloe is so sweet and gentle. Elena has such a bad temper, and is always so dramatic. No guy could stand her." I scrolled down and saw another message. "Remember when Liam worked overtime until midnight, and she still forced him to drive across town to get her takeout? So annoying. Total spoiled princess." Exactly. She deserved to get dumped. I stared at those words, my hands turning ice cold. On that night, Liam had been the one who insisted on buying me food, telling me to just name what I wanted. I had even told him to forget it because it was too late. He had laughed and told me it was fine. But in everyone else's mouths, it became proof of my selfishness. With my heart squeezing painfully, I instinctively typed a message into the Snapchat group. "You all knew about this?" The chat went dead silent for a second. The next second, a notification popped up. You have been removed from the group. They didn't even bother to give me an explanation. I sat on the edge of the bed and let out a soft, hollow laugh. It wasn't just my parents. It wasn't just Liam. My friends, my coworkers. Everyone had been lying to me. I stood up and started packing. I didn't want to stay in this place for another single minute. When I dragged my suitcase out, the living room was still decorated with white drapes and fresh flowers. Unfinished wedding favor boxes were scattered on the table, and Chloe's jacket was tossed casually over the sofa. It was as if they couldn't wait to make this place their new home. As I was packing, I suddenly noticed the birdcage by the window was empty. I froze. Where is my pet bird? My mom was clearing the table outside. She didn't even look up. Chloe said keeping him locked up was too cruel, so she let him go. The clothes in my hands dropped right back into the suitcase. She let him go? Chloe, sitting on the sofa, said softly, I was just doing what was best for him. It's so sad to keep him in a cage. Isn't freedom better? I spun around to face her, my voice shaking violently. He is a domesticated parrot. He can't survive in the wild. She flinched as if I had terrified her, her hands immediately guarding her stomach. How was I supposed to know? I was just trying to be nice. Nice. Erklärte her. I raised that bird for years. I turned to my parents. That was the birthday present you gave me. And you just let her release him. My dad frowned, completely dismissing it. It's just a bird. It's gone. If you want another one, we'll buy you a new one later. Buy me a new one. I stood there, suddenly finding myself completely speechless. I went back to packing in silence. Seeing that I was actually leaving, my mom finally got anxious. Stop acting out, Elena. You just lost your job. Where are you going to go by yourself? We did all of this for your own future. I picked up my suitcase and looked at her. If this is your idea of doing what's best for me, then you should have never given birth to me in the first place. I turned and walked toward the door. My dad's booming voice echoed from behind. Elena Vance, if you walk out that door today, don't you dare ever come back. I didn't stop. Just as I reached the door, Liam finally spoke. It's still pouring outside. Don't do anything reckless. I looked back at him. Liam, don't ever speak to me again. His face turned incredibly pale. I carried my box down the stairs, the cardboard cutting painfully into my arms. I ended up checking into a cheap, rundown motel. The room was tiny. The window wouldn't close properly, rattling loudly every time the night wind blew. I barely slept that night. I had lost my job, my home, and my boyfriend. My best friend was now his wife. My parents were on their side, and even my friends were laughing at me behind my back. But the moment the sun rose, I forced myself up to start sending out resumes. I had to survive. I used to be a top performer at my old company. I thought that no matter how unlucky I was, I could at least find a decent job. But reality was much harsher than I expected. At the first company, the interview went amazingly well, but they suddenly called back to say the position had been filled. At the second company, I went in person, but after the interviewer took a quick phone call, their attitude turned cold. The third company was even more direct. They didn't even let me pass the lobby. After getting rejected repeatedly, I finally realized something was wrong. It wasn't until I was standing outside a restroom at an office building that I overheard two girls whispering inside. Yeah, that's her. Vivian said she got fired from her last job for being a homewrecker. I heard she tried to steal someone's husband. Who would dare hire a person like that? I stood frozen, my blood running cold. My cousin Vivian worked at my old company, and she had been at the wedding reception that day. I immediately took an Uber straight to my old office. The moment I walked in, I noticed everyone stealing glances at me. Some quickly pretended to be busy, while others whispered near the break room. I walked straight up to Vivian's desk. Are you the one spreading those rumors about me? Vivian looked up, acting completely innocent. What rumors? That I'm a homewrecker. That I tried to steal someone's husband. That I got fired because of it. She leaned back in her chair and scoffed. I didn't lie. I just told people exactly what I saw at the party. I laughed out of sheer anger. I was the one who was betrayed. But the moment I said that, the whispers around us only grew louder. Clearly nobody believed me. Right then, Chloe walked in. She was there to hand in some paperwork, and she stumbled right into the scene. I stared at her, as if grabbing onto my last piece of evidence. Tell them who actually stole from whom. Was it you and Liam who went behind my back? Everyone's eyes locked onto Chloe. Her face drained of color. She instinctively shielded her stomach, her voice barely a whisper. Elena, please don't do this. I'm pregnant. With that single sentence, she sealed my fate. The looks of disgust from the bystanders solidified. Tears streamed down Chloe's face as she took a half step back. Things are already like this. The baby needs a father. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Just stop making a scene, okay? I looked at her, my chest so tight I could barely draw breath. In the end, under the judgmental stares of dozens of people, I was escorted out of the building by security. Rent was due, and I needed to eat. No matter how angry I was, I had to survive first. Eventually, I took a job as a waitress at a local restaurant. One night, the shift manager asked me to bring hot tea to one of the private dining booths. The moment I pushed the door open, I froze. My parents, Liam, Chloe, and a few of our relatives were all sitting inside. They were laughing and talking, looking like a perfect, happy family. And there I was, wearing a cheap apron, holding a teapot. The booth fell into dead silence. My mom's face twisted instantly. Liam looked up and froze when he saw me. Only Chloe, after a brief shock, gently rested her hand on her stomach. I gripped the tray tightly, my knuckles turning white, but I forced myself to say nothing. I walked in with my head down, pouring tea cup by cup. My mom hissed in a low voice. "How could you work in a place like this?" A relative whispered nearby. "She has a college degree. How did she end up like this? Didn't she used to have a nice office job?" I stood by the table. The teapot was boiling hot, but their words burned much worse. As I turned to leave, Chloe spoke up in her sweet, gentle voice. "Elena, have you been under too much stress lately? Why don't you sit down and eat with us? Don't be mad at us anymore." I finally looked up at her. She sat there, her baby bump slightly showing, pretending to care so much about me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Some people will rob you of everything, and then turn around and look at you with pity, as if your miserable state is entirely your own fault. "I'm working," I said coldly. My mom immediately cut in. "How long are you going to keep throwing this tantrum? You'd rather serve tables than come home." I looked at her. "I'm working to feed myself. And you call that a tantrum?" My dad's face darkened. "Look at yourself. You look pathetic. Stop this nonsense and come home. Stop embarrassing us out here." I suddenly let out a laugh. "I'm the one embarrassing you? When you gave my boyfriend to Chloe, did you think about how embarrassing that was?" The room fell dead silent. My mom looked furious. "Do you have to be so hostile?" "Hostile?" I asked. "I'm standing here pouring your tea. How much politer do you want me to be?" Liam hadn't said a word since I walked in, but now he finally spoke, his voice low. "Elena." I glared at him. "Don't call my name." His lips parted, but he closed them, saying nothing. Chloe slowly stood up, still looking weak and delicate. "Elena, no one wanted to humiliate you. We're truly worried about you being out here on your own. Since we ran into each other today, why don't we sit down and talk things through?" I stared at her. "Talk what through? Talk about how you got everything you wanted." Her eyes immediately filled with tears, and she cupped her stomach. "Please don't be like this." "Then how should I be?" I took a step toward her. "Aren't you the perfect actress? Come on, tell everyone again how you married Liam for my own good." The relatives lowered their heads. No one dared to speak. Panicked, my mom reached out and grabbed my arm. "Enough. Haven't you made enough of a scene?" I shoved her hand off. "I'm the one making a scene? Since the day of that wedding, did any of you ever care about my dignity?" I turned to walk out. But the moment I spun around, a sharp gasp echoed behind me. Chloe clutched her stomach, her knees buckling as she collapsed backward. She knocked over the cups on the table, spilling tea everywhere. The next second, a splash of red began to seep through her light-colored dress. The booth erupted into chaos. "Chloe!" My mom screamed and rushed over. My dad panicked. Liam bolted forward, immediately scooping Chloe into his arms. Chloe huddled in his chest, her face pale as paper, tears streaming down her face. I don't blame her. I really don't blame her. The moment she said that, everyone's eyes locked onto me with pure rage. Because a second ago, I was the one standing closest to her. I stood there, my body freezing. I didn't even touch her. But nobody listened. My mom rushed over and slapped me hard across the face. "Are you trying to kill her and the baby to be satisfied?" The slap knocked my head to the side. My ears buzzed. The relatives started shouting at me. How could she do that to a pregnant woman? What if something happens to the baby? She's completely heartless. The ambulance arrived quickly. Chloe was rushed to the hospital. After the examination, the doctor said the baby was fine. It was just a scare, but she needed absolute rest. In the hospital room, Chloe lay on the bed, looking pale and exhausted. But the moment she spoke, she was back to playing the saint. "I don't blame Elena. Really. She's been through too much lately. She's emotionally unstable. I understand." I snapped my head up to glare at her. But she didn't look at me. She just kept talking to my parents. "Maybe you should get her some professional help. I'm really scared that if she stays like this, she'll end up hurting herself, or someone else." My mom nodded immediately. "You're right. She hasn't been acting normal lately." My dad's face was grim, but he didn't object. I took a step back, my throat tightening. "I'm not sick." Liam stood by the bed. He looked troubled, as if he knew something wasn't right. But in the end, he didn't say a single word to defend me. My dad quickly made a phone call. That very night, I was forcefully taken to a private psychiatric facility. All the way there, I screamed and tried to explain. I was pinned down in the back of the car, tears and fury blinding me. I'm not crazy. What right do you have to lock me up? Liam, say something. I stared at him desperately, but he sat there in silence for a long time, only whispering. Just try to calm down, Elena. Calm down. Hearing those words felt like a knife carving out my heart. Before the car doors slammed shut, I could still hear Chloe's weak, pathetic whimpering from the hospital room. Once we arrived at the facility, the nightmare truly began. Doctors and nurses swarmed me, pinning me down to inject me with a sedative. The moment the needle pierced my skin, my entire body shivered from the pain. I looked up at them, suddenly losing the strength to fight. As the drugs kicked in, my vision blurred. I faintly heard my mom whispering nearby, once she gets better, she'll realize we did this for her own good. My dad grunted in agreement. I couldn't hear anything after that. The last thing I saw before closing my eyes was Liam's blurry shadow standing under the hallway light. 5 years of love. 3 years of living together. I had truly wanted to marry him. I had dreamed of our wedding, our children, and a long life together. But now, I regretted ever meeting him. After being locked in that private facility, I spent the first day trying to explain myself. And the second day. By the third day, I realized it was completely useless. The doctor asked why I was resisting treatment, and I said I wasn't sick. The nurse forced pills into my hand, and I told her my family had set me up. They just nodded and wrote in their notebooks. Patient is highly unstable. Continuous denial of illness. When I refused to take the meds, the nurses held me down and forced them down my throat. When I tried to run, the orderlies dragged me back. But the absolute worst part was the electroconvulsive therapy. The first time they wheeled me into that room, I didn't know what it was. But the moment I saw the machines, I started shaking. I backed away, crying and begging them to stop. 2 orderlies pinned me down while the nurses strapped my wrists. I fought with everything I had, screaming at the top of my lungs. Suddenly, the door opened, and Liam walked in. Like a drowning person grabbing a lifeline, I screamed to him through my tears. Liam, I'm not crazy. Please take me away from here. The next second, Liam reached out and held my shoulders down. Elena, stop fighting it. It's for your own good. In that instant, my crying stopped. When the needles went in and the electricity surged through my body, my entire frame went rigid. I screamed until my vocal cords practically shredded. When it was over, I threw up so hard I couldn't even stand. But they said I was still unstable. On the consent form for the treatment, Liam had signed his name. After that, I became quieter and quieter. The doses of medication kept increasing, and my brain felt like it was trapped in thick fog. Sometimes, daytime would pass, and I couldn't even tell if it was night. When someone asked how old I was, I had to think for a long time without finding an answer. When they asked for my name, it took me minutes to remember. One day, a nurse slipped a piece of candy into my hand. You were very good today. Here's a treat. I stared at the candy in my palm, sitting motionless for hours. I began to lose the ability to recognize people. When my mom came to visit, she stood by my bed crying, but I just found her noise incredibly irritating. My dad rarely came. He would stand at the door for a long time, and I had no idea who he was. But when Liam came, I was terrified. Even though my brain couldn't place his name, the moment I saw him, my arms would begin to throb in phantom pain, and my body would instinctively shrink back into the corner of the bed. Once a nurse took me out to get some fresh air. Liam was standing near the bench, calling my name in a cracked, hoarse voice. I clutched my stuffed animal tightly and whispered to the nurse, "Who is that man?" In that split second, Liam looked as if all the life had been sucked out of him. But I didn't know him anymore. Then the original testing hospital called. They said they had made a mistake with the fertility screening report. The files had been swapped with another patient who shared the same name. My actual fertility results had been completely normal. When Liam received the call, he was standing in the hospital corridor. His phone slipped from his hand, crashing to the floor as his face drained of all color. The phone call from the clinic's risk management division lasted exactly 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Liam stood in the fluorescent-lit corridor of the private psychiatric facility. The receiver pressed so hard against his ear that his knuckles turned chalk white. "Mr. Sterling?" The administrator's voice sounded clinical, stripped of all emotion. "We are issuing a formal notification regarding the reproductive health panel conducted on June 14th for patient Elena Vance. During a routine internal audit of our third-party laboratory partner, an index mismatch was identified. Patient Vance's sample was mislabeled with that of a terminal oncology patient, sharing the same surname." Liam's chest caved in. What? What did you just say?" Patient Vance's actual ovarian reserve and hormone levels are completely within normal parameters. The voice continued smoothly, legally hedging every word. "Her fertility profile is optimal. The previous report indicating irreversible. Early ovarian failure was issued in error. A corrected copy has been uploaded to her digital chart. We deeply regret the oversight. The line went dead. Liam stared at his phone as the lock screen faded to black. The hallway around him seemed to tilt violently. The smell of floor wax and rubbing alcohol hit his nose like acid. Optimal. Completely within normal parameters. He turned his head slowly, looking through the small, reinforced glass window of room 104. Inside, Elena was sitting on the edge of a narrow cot. She was wearing a gray, oversized hospital gown that hung off her bony shoulders. Her eyes, once so sharp, so bright, so quick to challenge him when he was lazy, were hollow and fixed on a spot on the linoleum floor. Her right thumb was repeatedly rubbing her palm in a rhythmic, compulsive tick, a nervous habit she had developed after her second electroconvulsive therapy session. When he had walked up to her earlier with a stuffed animal, she had looked up at the nurse and asked, "Who is that man?" Liam's knees hit the cold floor with a dull thud. The entire foundation of his life over the past 12 months, the secret marriage to Chloe, the secret apartment transfer, the silent nods of approval from Elena's parents, the quiet, self-righteous justification that he was doing the right thing for his family line, had been built on a piece of paper that was a mistake. "Liam? Babe." The soft, delicate voice echoed from the end of the hall. Chloe stood there, holding a paper bag from a high-end bakery. She wore a plush cashmere cardigan over her small bump, her face glowing with the quiet, contented look of a woman who had won everything she had ever desired. She walked over, her designer heels clicking softly against the tile. When she saw Liam kneeling on the floor, her smile flickered. "Liam? What's wrong? Is your stomach hurting again?" She reached down to touch his shoulder. Liam didn't look up. He slowly raised the phone screen toward her face. "They called." Chloe frowned, her voice dipping into that sweet, confused tone she always used. "Who called, sweetie?" "The lab. The fertility clinic." Liam's voice sounded like it was being dragged over crushed glass. "There was a mistake, Chloe. Elena isn't infertile. Never was." The report was swapped. Chloe's hand froze midair, inches from his coat collar. For a fraction of a second, so fast that anyone else would have missed it, the gentle, helpless expression vanished from her face. Her eyes went flat, cold, and calculating. Then just as quickly, she gasped, covering her mouth with both hands, her eyes welling with instant tears. "Oh my God, oh no. Liam, that's terrible. Ow. Could the hospital make such a mistake? That's monstrous." Liam looked up at her. For 5 years, he had seen Chloe as the sweet, frail victim, the girl who needed protecting, the girl who didn't have a family of her own, the girl who looked at him with endless admiration while Elena demanded he be a better, stronger man. But looking up at her now, sitting beneath the harsh, unforgiving lights of a mental hospital where his real girlfriend was slowly losing her mind, he saw something else. "You knew," he whispered. Chloe's face went rigid. "What?" "You handled the portal logins for the clinic," Liam said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "Last year, when Elena asked why the results were taking so long, you were the one who went to the clinic's front office to pick up the paper copies because you said you were passing by. You were the one who brought the sealed envelope to her parents' house." "Liam, are you insane?" Chloe stepped back, clutching her stomach defensively. "Are you blaming me? I was just trying to help. How could I know what was inside? A sealed medical envelope? Because you wanted this apartment." Liam roared, standing up so fast Chloe stumbled back against the wall. "You wanted this life. You wanted her home, her parents, her friends, her boyfriend." "Keep your voice down," a nurse shouted from the station down the hall. "This is a restricted unit." Chloe stared at him, her watery eyes drying up instantly. The soft, helpless tone was completely gone when she spoke next. "Careful, Liam," she said in a low, dangerous whisper. "You signed those consent forms for her therapy, not me. You gave this apartment to me as a wedding gift. With her parents. If anyone goes down for what happened to Elena, it won't be the pregnant wife. It'll be the coward who couldn't wait to replace her." 3 weeks later, the morning sun broke over the high brick wall of the facility's courtyard. Elena sat on a green wooden bench, a wool blanket draped over her knees. Her brain felt slightly less foggy today, but the fog was being replaced by a strange, heavy stillness. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't ask to leave. When the nurses handed her cups of paper pills, she swallowed them without looking. Patient Vance. Elena didn't turn her head. She assumed it was another orderly coming to tell her it was time for group therapy. "Elena Vance?" The voice wasn't soft like the nurses' voices, nor was it loud like her father's. It was crisp, calm, and carried a sharp, authoritative authority. Elena slowly turned her head. A woman in her late 30s stood beside the bench. She wore a sharp charcoal pantsuit, a dark silk scarf, and carried a thick leather briefcase. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight, professional knot, and her eyes were scanning Elena's face with intense, analytical focus. Behind her stood two men in dark suits, not hospital orderlies but private security officers, along with the facility's chief medical director, who was sweating profusely and wringing his hands. "Miss Vance," the woman said, stepping closer and extending a hand. "My name is Evelyn Reed. I am a senior partner at Reed and Mercer Civil Rights Litigation. I am here as your court-appointed independent legal advocate." Elena stared at the woman's hand. Her fingers twitched under the wool blanket, but she didn't reach out. I don't need a lawyer," Elena murmured, her voice rasping from disuse. "I'm sick. My doctor said my brain is unstable." Evelyn Reed turned her head slightly, shooting a look at the chief medical director that made the man visibly flinch. "Your doctor is currently under federal investigation for accepting improper financial kickbacks from private residential facilities," Evelyn said, her tone devoid of any hesitation. "And your family's authorization for your involuntary commitment was formally suspended by a state magistrate judge at 6 o'clock this morning." Elena's heart gave a strange, violent thud against her ribs. The heavy fog in her mind seemed to crack just a little. Suspended? 2 days ago, a former senior executive at your previous employer, a woman named Victoria Sterling, filed a formal missing person report with the state attorney general's office, Evelyn explained, sitting down gently on the far end of the bench. "She tried to hire you as a private consultant for her new firm and discovered you had vanished. When she tracked you to this facility, she hired my firm to audit your admission records." Evelyn opened her briefcase, pulling out a thick, tabbed folder. "We have reviewed your original admission paperwork, your brain scans, the lab audit regarding your reproductive panel, and the illegal proxy signatures provided by a man named Liam Sterling, who, according to state marriage records, was not your legal spouse when he authorized invasive medical procedures on your behalf." Elena listened. Every word fell into her quiet, damaged mind like heavy stones dropped into a compound. Liam wasn't her husband. She wasn't infertile. Her boss had been looking for her. "Miss Vance," Evelyn said softly, her sharp eyes softening just a fraction. "A medical transport van is waiting at the front gate. An independent team of neurologists at St. Jude University Hospital is ready to evaluate you, clear the sedatives from your system, and begin your physical recovery." Evelyn leaned forward, holding out a single sheet of paper and a black pen. "I just need your signature to revoke all medical power of attorney previously granted to your parents and Mr. Sterling." Elena looked down at the pen. Her hands were shaking. Not from the medication, not from the fear, but from something deep within her chest that had been buried under layers of shock, betrayal, and forced electric shocks. A tiny, white-hot spark of rage. She reached out, took the pen from Evelyn Reed's hand, and pressed the tip to the paper. Her handwriting was shaky, jagged, and uneven, nothing like the crisp, elegant signature she used to sign on corporate reports, but every letter of her name was pressed into the paper so hard the ballpoint nearly tore through. She handed the pen back, looked Evelyn straight in the eye, and spoke 4 words. "Take me out now." The detoxification process at St. Jude University Hospital lasted 12 days. It was not easy, as the heavy antipsychotics and sedatives were slowly flushed from her bloodstream. Elena suffered from intense tremors, cold sweats, and vivid, terrifying nightmares of the ECT machine's buzzing electrodes. But under the care of real neurologists who were not being paid by her father or Liam, her mind began to reconstruct itself piece by piece. By the second week, her memory returned in full, agonizing clarity. She remembered the rain on the day she was laid off. She remembered the cardboard box falling to the floor. She remembered the sight of her parents standing in the living room she had helped pay for, handing her life over to Chloe with warm, comfortable smiles. She remembered her cousin Vivian spreading rumors at the office, the humiliation at the restaurant, and the sharp cold slap from her mother in the hospital room. She remembered everything. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Elena sat up in her private room on the 8th floor of St. Jude's medical wing. She wore a plain navy jumpsuit provided by her legal team. Her dark hair was washed, brushed, and pulled back into a neat ponytail. She had lost weight, and her cheekbones were sharp, but her eyes were no longer hollow. They were cold, clear, and quiet. Evelyn Reed sat across from her, laying out 3 thick binders on the rolling bedside table. "Your blood work is entirely clear of neuroleptics now," Evelyn said, opening the first binder. "Dr. Blake has filed his final diagnostic report with the court. He has certified that you suffer from no chronic psychiatric illness, and that your temporary disorientation was entirely induced by improper pharmaceutical administration and unindicated electroconvulsive therapy. What about the criminal charges? Elena asked, her voice smooth and unhurried. The state attorney's office has officially taken over the file, Evelyn replied. The private facility has been served with 34 regulatory violations. The chief medical officer's license has been suspended pending grand jury indictment for medical negligence and false imprisonment. And Liam? Evelyn pulled a sheet of paper from the second binder. Liam Sterling signed 12 separate medical consent forms claiming to be your domestic partner with legal power of attorney, despite being legally married to Chloe Frost at the time. He is facing charges of felony medical fraud, conspiracy to commit unlawful confinement, and falsification of legal documents. Elena stared at the window, watching the raindrops streak down the glass. And my parents. Your parents signed the initial involuntary commitment petition, Evelyn said, carefully, because they are your immediate blood relatives. The criminal threshold for them is slightly higher. Their defense will argue they acted on flawed medical advice. However, civilly, we can strip them of every asset they own. Evelyn pushed the third binder toward Elena. This is the civil suit draft, Elena. We are suing your parents, Liam, Chloe, the clinic, and the facility for $14 million in compensatory and punitive damages. We are also filing for the immediate revocation of the property deed for your apartment on the grounds of fraudulent transfer and elder/dependent exploitation. Elena touched the smooth leather cover of the binder. I don't care about the $14 million, Evelyn, she said quietly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Then what do you care about? Elena turned her face away from the window, looking at her attorney with an expression that made even the veteran trial lawyer feel a sudden chill run down her spine. I want them to stand in a room where no one believes their lies, Elena said. I want them to feel what it's like when the door locks from the outside. While Elena was recovering at St. Jude's, the apartment she had once shared with Liam was slowly falling apart from the inside. The grand wedding decorations had been taken down, but the air inside Suite 4B was heavy and suffocating. Liam sat at the kitchen island, 3 empty beer bottles standing in front of him. He hadn't shaved in a week. His phone lay on the quartz countertop, buzzing every 20 minutes with calls from his company's human resources department, his lawyer, and reporters from local news outlets who had picked up the story of the psychiatric facility indictment. In the master bedroom, Chloe was screaming into her phone. What do you mean the deed is frozen? My name is on the title. My parents-in-law gifted it to us. She slammed her bedroom door open, stepping into the living room in a pink silk robe, her face red with fury. Liam, do something. The bank just sent a notice saying there's an emergency lien on the property. We can't sell it, we can't mortgage it, and the HOA is threatening to lock the parking garage because of the reporters outside. Liam didn't even look up from his beer glass. It's over, Chloe. Stop saying that. Chloe rushed over, grabbing his arm, her voice rising in pitch. It's not over. Your lawyer said if we stick to the story, if we say we're just worried about Elena's mental health because she was acting crazy after her layoff, the judge will dismiss the criminal fraud charge. Liam let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Did you read the news this morning, Chloe? The state attorney released the clinic's internal audit log. They found the digital footprint of the person who paid $2,000 in cash to the lab technician to swap the sample files. Chloe's hand slipped off his sleeve. Her face went completely white. The lab technician took a plea deal yesterday, Liam said, his voice terrifyingly calm as he turned his head to look at her. He gave the police the text messages from a burner phone. The burner phone was purchased using a credit card registered to your old address. No, Chloe whispered, taking a step back, her hands instinctively moving to shield her stomach. No, that's a lie. Someone stole my card. You ruined her, Liam said, standing up slowly. He looked around the apartment. The marble countertops Elena had picked out, the light fixtures she had spent weeks searching for, the balcony where she used to grow fresh basil. You ruined her, and I helped you do it because I was a pathetic, cowardly idiot who wanted an easy life. Liam, think about the baby. Chloe cried out, her voice breaking into hysterical sobs. I'm carrying your child. You can't leave me. Is it even mine? Liam asked, his voice dead of all feeling. Chloe froze as if she had been slapped across the face. What did you say? I don't know what's real anymore, Chloe, Liam said, walking toward the front door and picking up his coat. I don't know if the baby is mine. I don't know if you ever cared about me, or if you just wanted her life. But I do know one thing. He opened the front door, stepping out into the hallway where 2 process servers from Reed and Mercer were already standing, holding crisp white envelopes. I'm going to jail, Liam said, looking back at her one last time. And when I come out, I'm going to make sure you have nothing left. The preliminary evidentiary hearing for the state of New York versus Liam Sterling et al. Took place in District Court 3A on a bright, freezing morning in late October. The courtroom was packed to maximum capacity. On the right side of the gallery sat Elena's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Vance. They wore quiet, modest dark clothes, looking like grieving parents who had been horribly misunderstood. Her mother held a wet handkerchief to her nose, weeping quietly for the cameras, while her father sat rigidly with his arms crossed, his face set in a stubborn, defensive frown. In the middle row sat Vivian, Elena's cousin, alongside 3 of the former friends from the Snapchat group chat. They looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting in their seats every time a bailiff walked past. At the defense table sat Liam and Chloe, seated 5 feet apart, refusing to speak to or look at each other. Chloe wore a simple maternity dress, looking small and fragile, while her lawyer repeatedly whispered in her ear. And then, the double doors at the back of the courtroom opened. The entire gallery turned their heads. Elena walked down the center aisle. She wore a tailored charcoal wool coat over a crisp cream blouse. Her posture was straight, her chin raised, her walk steady and unhurried. There was no trace of the trembling, confused woman who had been dragged into the back of a car 3 months ago. Beside her walked Evelyn Reed and 2 junior associates, carrying 4 heavy leather litigation cases. As Elena passed her parents' row, her mother reached out a trembling hand, her voice cracking with performative emotion. Elena, honey, please. Elena didn't slow down. She didn't turn her head. She walked past them as if they were made of glass, taking her seat at the prosecution's private counsel table. All rise, the bailiff called out. The Honorable Judge Susan Montgomery, presiding. The hearing moved with terrifying speed. The prosecutor, working in tandem with Evelyn Reed's civil team, presented the evidence systematically, dropping each piece onto the record like a heavy steel weight. First came the corrected lab reports from the reproductive clinic, proving Elena's health was flawless. Second came the bank statements showing the $80,000 loan Elena had personally given her brother-in-law, juxtaposed against her parents' secret land transfer deed handing her apartment over to Chloe. Third came the recorded audio from the restaurant, retrieved from the facility's security cameras in the dining booth, proving that Elena had never touched Chloe before Chloe collapsed onto the floor. And finally, the prosecution played the audio file retrieved from the private psychiatric facility's intake room. The courtroom went so quiet you could hear the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. On the recording, Elena's frantic, desperate voice echoed through the speakers. I'm not crazy. What right do you have to lock me up? Liam, say something. Followed by Liam's low, calm, terrifying response. Elena, stop fighting it. It's for your own good. Followed by the sound of heavy metal straps tightening, nurses calling for sedatives, and Elena's long, agonizing scream as the first treatment was administered. In the gallery, several journalists gasped aloud. Elena's mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably, while her father's stubborn face slowly drained of all color. On the defense side, Liam slumped forward, his forehead pressing against the polished wood of the table, his shoulders shaking in silent, irredeemable shame. Judge Montgomery looked down from the bench, her face carved out of stone. He adjusted her glasses, looking directly at the defense table. In my 24 years on the bench, Judge Montgomery said, her voice echoing clearly off the high mahogany walls, I have rarely witnessed a more calculated, inhumane abuse of familial authority and medical proxy power for personal gain. She slammed her gavel down with a sharp, terrifying crack. Bail for defendant Liam Sterling is revoked immediately. He will remain in county custody pending full criminal trial. Defendant Chloe Frost will surrender her passport and be placed on electronic monitoring. An immediate injunction is placed on all disputed real estate assets. Court is adjourned. 6 weeks later, the civil settlement was finalized out of court. Faced with ironclad criminal evidence and the certainty of long prison sentences, Liam, Chloe, and Elena's parents signed every document Evelyn Reed put in front of them in a desperate attempt to secure leniency from the prosecutor. The apartment deed was formally voided and returned to Elena's sole name. The $80,000 loan was ordered to be repaid immediately through the liquidation of her parents' personal investment accounts. The private psychiatric facility was permanently closed by the State Health Board, its owners facing federal fraud indictments. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Elena stood in the living room of Suite 4B. The apartment was completely empty. All of Chloe's furniture, all of Liam's belongings, all the wedding favor boxes, and the white drapes had been cleared out by a professional removal crew. The walls were bare, the floor swept clean, the morning sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the quiet dust motes floating in the air. A knock sounded at the open front door. Elena turned. Her parents stood in the doorway. Her father looked 10 years older, his hair completely gray, his shoulders hunched in a posture of defeat. Her mother was thin, her eyes red, holding a small brown cardboard box. Elena, her mother whispered, her voice trembling. We brought the rest of your old things from our attic. The photos, your college diplomas. Elena stood near the window, her hands resting calmly in the pockets of her cardigan. Leave the box by the door. Her father took a step forward, his voice hoarse and desperate. Elena, please, the criminal court judge is sentencing us next week. The prosecutor said if you write a victim impact statement asking for leniency, your mother and I won't have to serve active jail time. We're your parents, Elena. We made a terrible mistake, but we were misled by Chloe. We thought. You didn't think I was sick, Elena interrupted softly. Her father froze. You knew I wasn't sick, Elena said, her voice perfectly calm, completely devoid of anger or bitterness. You just wanted me to be quiet. You wanted Chloe to have a baby because you liked her better. You wanted Liam to stay in the family because he had a good corporate title. You locked me in a room with electric shocks because my grief was inconvenient for your new life. Her mother burst into fresh tears, sinking onto her knees near the door. Elena, please, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you, and you should have never given birth to me, Elena said, quoting the exact words she had spoken on the night she left. Isn't that what you told me? She pulled a set of keys from her pocket and tossed them onto the kitchen counter. The apartment has been sold, Elena said. A real estate investment firm bought it this morning. The closing proceeds have already been transferred to my new account in Chicago. Her parents stared at her in shock. Chicago? I start my new job as Senior Operations Director at Sterling Logistics on Monday, Elena said, walking past them toward the open door. My car is waiting downstairs. Elena, wait. Her father reached out to grab her coat sleeve. Elena stopped, turning her head slowly to look down at his hand. There was no hatred in her eyes. There was only a vast, infinite emptiness. A total, absolute absence of connection. As if he were a complete stranger who had brushed against her shoulder on a crowded subway train. Her father's hand slowly slipped off her sleeve. He backed away, his face pale, realizing in that single moment that his daughter was truly gone. Not dead, not crazy, but entirely untethered from him forever. Elena picked up her small leather handbag from the counter, walked out of Suite 4B, and stepped into the elevator. The heavy steel doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the empty apartment, her weeping mother, and the quiet hallway where she had once bled in silence. 1 year later, the autumn air in downtown Chicago was crisp, cool, and smelled of falling leaves and rain off the lake. In a spacious, light-filled office on the 42nd floor of the Sterling Commerce Tower, Elena sat at a wide walnut desk, reviewing quarterly operational logistics reports. She wore an elegant burgundy suit, her dark hair falling softly over her shoulders. Her skin was healthy, her posture confident, her movements precise and deliberate. A knock sounded on her office door. Her executive assistant, a bright young woman named Sarah, stepped inside, carrying a stack of mail and a warm travel mug of green tea. Good morning, Miss Vance, Sarah said brightly, setting the tea on her desk. Here are the signed regional carrier contracts from the Midwest Division. Oh, and these came in the certified mail for you. Sarah handed her 2 legal notices. Elena opened the first one. It was an official notification from the State Department of Corrections. Liam Sterling's application for early parole had been formally denied. He would serve the remaining 4 years of his 6-year sentence for medical fraud and unlawful restraint at the state correctional facility. She opened the second notice. It was a bankruptcy discharge document regarding Chloe Frost. Following the civil judgment and the fraud conviction, Chloe had lost her car, her savings, and her social standing, and was currently living in a state-subsidized housing unit while working part-time at a commercial laundry facility to meet her court-ordered restitution payments. As for her parents, they were serving 2 years of home confinement and community service, exiled entirely from their old social circle, living in a small rented bungalow after selling their family home to pay their legal fees. Elena looked at the papers for a quiet 3 seconds. She didn't smile. She didn't feel a surge of malicious joy. She simply folded the documents neatly in half, dropped them into the shredder bin beside her desk, and watched the paper turn into thin, harmless white ribbons. Miss Vance, Sarah asked, noticing her pause. Is everything okay with those files? Elena looked up, a soft, genuine smile spreading across her face, a smile that reached all the way to her bright, clear eyes. Everything is fine, Sarah, Elena said, picking up her pen and turning back to her logistics report. Everything is exactly as it should be. She picked up her warm tea, looked out the high glass windows at the vast, endless blue horizon of Lake Michigan stretching out before her, and took a deep, clear, peaceful breath of fresh air.